Well, let me from the outset say, Doug, that if God were happy in any place, it would be a house that you built. So I'd like to think about this morning the way that we think about God as being all-powerful and how that impacts our relationship with God and our understanding of God, having a God be the consummate source of all power. It's interesting that in Mark's gospel, if you had the right one in front of you, you would see that the story for today is not the powerful stories that surround this passage. Instead, it's this. Those powerful stories are, first of all, the feeding of the 5,000, a showing of great power in the miracle that Jesus does in feeding people from nothing so that everyone had their fill and there was abundance. And then the other great show of power in Mark's gospel is Jesus walking on the water. And these two powerful stories of the manifestation of Jesus' role as the Son of God, which Mark calls signs of God's power, are there in the gospel, but not in the reading for today. And the reading for today, in fact, focuses on a very different moment. It's a moment when expectations are not met and are, in fact, we take a detour from what we expect. Now, in the Jewish Testament, we hear about the desire of the Jewish people to build a suitable house for God to dwell in, for the ark to be placed in. And God kind of comes back to the Jewish people and kind of argues with them a little bit. The Jewish people want to build a magnificent place that reflects God's power. But instead, God says, well, I'll live with you. I'll come live with you on Deep Hollow Road. But I kind of like being with you on the Taconic as well. I like being with you as you live your ordinary lives, not just in the place where power is manifested. And then in the letter to the Ephesians, we hear how the Gentile world, this powerful world, this world in which power meant everything, is reminded now of the true nature of power, which is in God and manifested in Jesus. There is a very moving part of that epistle where the writer says, there were people who didn't know about God. They were strangers in this world, and now they know because of Jesus. And then back to Mark. Again, this wonderful story that we hear about the disciples having seen the great power of God, exercise power in his name, and now want some rest. So they've booked some rooms at the Four Seasons in Gennesaret, and off they go for a bit of rest and relaxation. But word of the power that Jesus wields in terms of healing has gone before them. And when they get to the place where they expect to be able to relax into the stories of power, they're called to heal broken people. Gennesaret was a place of warm springs that the people believed had healing qualities. So there were many people that were there already trying desperately to heal people that they loved. This was their last chance. This was their chance, their opportunity to restore the people that they loved to health. And now this man, Jesus, appears, whose reputation is he's a great healer. So the story pivots from the expectation of power to the exercise of what's needed in relationships, and that's healing. We've heard so eloquently the many qualities of Ben Ali in terms of his personality, his gifts, his being a great gentleman. And I think the gospel reminds us again and again through the words of Jesus and the stories that we hear about Jesus that it's great to have power, but it's great to do the work of God. And that may not be a manifestation of power. Instead, it may be an exercise in reaching out to one another in much smaller ways. It may not be the manifestation of God in dramatic moments like the feeding of the 5,000 or the walking on water, but it comes in people willing and wanting to be touched by Jesus with the faith and the hope that they'll be healed. And as we've spoken about, it really comes down to relationships. Relationships with one another that then reflect our relationship with God. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I can speak for myself, having been married for 24 years, that very often there are things that Tim does that really annoys me. After all this time, I know exactly what they are. They're not going to change, but I love pointing them out. And it doesn't have to be in words. Again, nothing like all of you, but I found a well-placed sigh does a great deal. So if Tim has once again put the car in the wrong place in the driveway, or left all the lights on in the house when he leaves, or not taken out the garbage, I just have to convey with a sigh of the ages what the truth is. And it's hard because the power of that is I'm right. But I have to say that as hard as it is, and it's the hardest thing in my relationship, is to say when I've been wrong, to admit I've done something to hurt the other person. And going back to that and admitting it drives me to distraction. But the moments over dinner where I have been able to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, I was speaking out of this or that for this reason, are moments when I experience healing and power. Not in the exercise of being right, but being in relationship with someone I love. And for me, the power of the gospel is a reminder that true power resides in the way that we treat each other and the way that we treat the world. And we do that with respect, we do that with honoring each other, and with a willingness to say when we're wrong in seeking healing. You know, having Ben Ali's favorite hymns is a wonderful thing at this service, and the final hymn today will be Onward Christian Soldiers. And let me just hasten to say that my understanding of that hymn is not urging us as we leave this building today to go out and fight the world, fight others who don't believe the way we do, but instead it's reminding me to fight the person in me that has resisted the person God has created. The combat is within myself, to be the better person that God has created me to be. So we have wonderful examples like Ben Ali and each of us in our lives of how we are meant to be, and with God's grace and God's power, we'll continue and become the people we were born to be. Amen.